Yo, what's up, my fellow pimps, plays, and hustlers? Welcome back to the next episode of the podcast. Today's episode, I want to talk about a few different things. One of them talking about calibration, thinking about the end consumer and the end person that you're trying to speak with, what value that you can provide to them, as well as I want to talk about getting down on yourself and being able to just learn from every single thing in your life, right? So, over the past few days or weeks, I've been learning to get better with my copy, right? I've been learning to become a better copywriter at XYZ. I was talking with Andrew, not Andrew Tate. There's a professor in the Hustlers University 2.0 whose name is Andrew as well, which is really fucking confusing. He's a copywriting professor. And one of the things he was saying is I was telling him about how I can't wait till I get to your level to where I don't have to worry about my copy being bad anymore, or feeling like I have to keep improving. I don't know, I just felt like I was always finding things I needed to work on. And it could be frustrating when you don't get sales or you don't get the result that you want. And he was saying, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret, that that almost never goes away. You almost always find ways to get better and improve and things like that. And it kind of led me to this idea that I had this realization where I put this email out today for a client and it hit really well. And the reason it hit really well was because I was very vulnerable. I shared a very vulnerable story of the clients, which people really resonated with. And then that made them be like, well, I can relate to that person. He's a real person. He's not just a robot. And so I came to this realization that when you're writing copy or just anything in general, right? In life, this applies to everything in life. So if you're not a copywriter, please stick to this. So what happens is you start over here, right? You're on the left side and you're very doing one thing. So the left side, for example, with copywriting is being very persuasive, using a lot of very persuasive words and things like that get people to buy. And then you have over here, which is being real, authentic, a human. People realize you're a real person. And what happens is you want to kind of be in the middle where you're kind of hitting both sides. But what happens is as you start to do things and you learn things in life, you start to kind of ebb and flow, where sometimes you go a little bit too far this way. Maybe you can learn a lesson about you need to be persuasive. And so you start applying that lesson, but then you apply it too much. And then what happens is you go outside of this extreme to where it's no longer good. And you have to kind of come back, and then you learn a new lesson about I need to be more human. And then you kind of come to the outside of this extreme, and then you end up realizing fuck, now I need to be more persuasive again. And then you come back this way until eventually you've gone enough times on these extremes that these walls of extremes start to kind of close to where you're only really bouncing from here to here, and the margin for error becomes smaller. And that's what I'm starting to realize. And that's the thing in life as well, is you're always going to learn, and you're always going to have lessons to learn. You're always going to get better. You're never going to be perfect. And the key thing is, as you get more experience, you don't ever really get rid of the errors. You just kind of close the walls to where there's less room for you to be way over here and way over here. You have less error because you have experience, and you know how to catch yourself and calibrate when things aren't going how they're supposed to go. And so it kind of reminds me of speaking to women, right? I used to work for a dating coach, and one of the things we'd say all the time is people need to learn calibration, right? One person would learn a concept from this group or from me or something, and then learn another concept that's kind of contradictory to what I just said. And because they're contradictory, people they don't know how to take it with a grain of salt. And so what happens is you have people that are way over here, right? There are people that are very red pill, very polarizing, very whatever, which isn't right. And you have people over here which are too nice, too whatever, and then that doesn't work either. And there's so many areas where that happens. There's so many areas where people go too far to the extreme and they don't know how to calibrate. They don't know how to come into the middle. And so a lot of talking to a woman is when you're speaking to her, you calibrate to what happens. So let's say you say something and it's very polarizing and she gives you a bad reaction. Well, then you don't just keep laying on that and then being oh, well, she's just a bitch, or she doesn't understand my humor. No, my coach always used to say leave it to a shitty pickup artist to say, oh, a girl doesn't understand my humor. No, you just don't have fucking game, bro. people that actually have game like know how to calibrate to like what is happening in every situation. And so like for example, you could talk to a girl, and again, this is not every time, right? Like, it's just some girls are going to get rejected. They're not going to be into you. I'm just talking about in generalizations. So like, let's say you talk to someone, you say something very polarizing, and they don't like that. Then you dial it back, and you go, okay, cool, I need to calibrate. Let me use something over here. And then once they kind of get used to how you are and they start to like you more, then you can start going back and doing the things over here. And it's a constant ping pong. You're never going to be like doing everything right. You're never going to be super smooth. That's very rare that you're very, very smooth and very on. What happens is you kind of ebb and flow, and eventually things happen. And the girl realizes like that you're a human being, right? Like, oh, this dude isn't perfect. Like, duh, he's a fucking human. And so anyways, that kind of applies to business and life, right? Like there's always these ebb and flows of like things that you're learning. You're always going to keep going over the extremes, and as you get better, you kind of lower the area for those extremes to happen, and you just become a lot better. And then when you learn a lesson, you're able to apply that lesson, but you don't go so far in the extreme. You're able to just like use that lesson on top of what you already have. And that kind of goes into another topic. I was just listening to Jamie Eden's recent podcast where he talks about like customer service and stuff like that. And if you haven't checked him out, check him out, link in the description. He's very beast. He kind of got me to start doing these podcasts because he inspired me. One of the things he talked about was you need to be able to think about the end value of like what a customer wants or what a person wants. He's talking about how he was talking to Andrew Tate, and he was thinking about like, he was really meticulously trying to think of like what to text Andrew, because he realizes that Andrew's a busy person. And he was like, I didn't want to do that first because it feels like I'm being a beta or I'm like supplicating to the person. But that's realizing that when someone's really busy and they're really successful, you don't want to waste their time. You want to separate yourself from everyone else. And the same thing happens when you're talking to a beautiful woman. You cannot become categorized. Categorization is death. They talk about that in marketing. If you become categorized, that's a problem. So you want to make sure you quickly separate yourself from other people. So the way to do that is to put energy and investment and thought into how can, like, okay, this person has more money than me and I don't have money. So because I don't have money, I need to put the thing that I do have is time and energy and investment. So I can put that time, energy, and investment into someone who has money but doesn't have a lot of time. So if you can put time, energy, and investment, the one asset you have and you don't have money, into someone who has money, eventually the gap will bridge and you'll be able to become friends or whatever. And so what happens is you figure out, how can I provide value to someone? And value is relative, because for example, somebody would be like, oh, I took this person on a trip, like a vacation or something. Like that was so valuable to them. But what if there's someone who hates trips? Or what if there's someone who, has a lot of money and they don't want to go on trips? They can go on trips whenever they want, but they don't want to. That's not value to them. You have to figure out what is their primary driver emotion? What's the or PDE? What's the thing that really drives them? For some people, they're really successful, but they suck at getting women. So you could teach them how to get women. Or for other people, it's, they have a terrible diet, or they don't have time to, deal with customers and shit. So maybe you can help them with customer service, or maybe they, don't have time to do Instagram. So you help them manage their Instagram, or whatever it is. You have to find like what is something that they need help with that you can help and give value, and give that to them without expecting anything in return. You're just doing it just purely to give value. And what happens is over time you build a relationship, because the universe operates on fair exchange. So there's what's called like a fair exchange value. So you have like, if you're giving, and the person is not giving, what's going to happen is eventually the universe scales, they're going to tip, and the person's going to feel the fact that you've given so much and they haven't, and they're going to want to tip the scales back to balance. Everything in the universe wants to be balanced. And so what happens is, if you're giving, eventually they're going to be like, well, shit, I need to give back. And so maybe they allow you to join some group for free, or maybe they allow you to, they fly you out, or whatever it is that you want, they'll be able to help you back. And so a great example of this is like my last boss that I worked for, he was like one of the best dating coaches in the world. And when I first met him, I met him at a seminar. And when I talked to him, I didn't go up, I didn't say, oh my God, I love your content, I love this, how do I get more women, or what, like, what is a typical guy doing when they run up and talk to him? They're like, oh my God, I love XYZ, right? They go up and they ask question. It's like, dude, imagine how many people bombard them with questions. They have no reason to answer your questions, dude. Like, they're busy people. So what I did was I went up and treated him like a normal human being. I was like, oh shit, I heard you live in Austin. Like, I'm thinking about moving there. Like, et cetera, et cetera. And he's like, oh yeah, I love Austin. It's so sick. I'm like, yeah, I really want to go there and get like barbecue. I heard the nightlife there is really sick. We're just talking like a normal human being, providing value. Now, like I said, value is relative. In that environment, value could just be me allowing him to relax and giving him good positive energy, because everyone else is sucking energy from him and being negative and just asking. So value in that situation is relative. Value is I talk to him so that he can just talk about regular human being things, and that allows him to relax so that then when he goes on stage, he's not nervous. Boom, value is relative. And so then I see him again another seminar when I moved to Austin. I'm like, oh hey, I'm that dude that talked to you in Vegas or whatever. He's like, oh shit, what's up, man? We started talking, I'm asking him like, just a few questions and stuff. And then he just says like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, and I just started marketing. I'm trying to learn how to do marketing, et cetera, et cetera. He's like, oh, well, I'm actually looking to take on an intern. Boom. And then I'm like, okay, well, sick. And he's like, cool, hit me up. I'm like, all right. And then he hits me up, and then we chat, and then eventually I work with him as an intern. Ended up working for him for a whole year. I worked as an intern for about 3 months, and then he hired me full time. Worked for about a year, and then ended up leaving that company, and we're really good friends to this day. I'm probably gonna have him on this podcast, and like once I hit 1,000 subs, I'll ask him to come on, because again, he's busy. I want to make sure that there's value for him to receive for joining. But yeah, like I learned so much